Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Talk with Lizzy podcast. I'm your host, Lizzy, and we're back with another special guest. Her name is Kat. We graduated together, and she reached out to me about sharing her mental health journey. So I'm excited to have her on and to share her story. So without further ado, let's get into it.
What is your story? So my story basically kind of centers around mental health. Kind of like starting at the beginning when I was a child. I had a pretty happy childhood, and I didn't really experience things like depression or anxiety, not yet at least. And I grew up in a bit of a sheltered Christian household. We are also homeschooled, of course. So yeah, I didn't really know a lot about the world. I had a lot of joy. I had a lot of dreams for the future. But it wasn't until I think seventh grade that I started just experiencing more of life, experiencing the hardships, learning about hard things, and that definitely weighed a lot on me. So, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So in seventh grade, I started experiencing a little bit of anxiety. Maybe I experienced it earlier. I was a pretty happy kid, but I did get anxious about some things. But this was around the time when, in middle school, you just compare yourself to everyone and you're like, oh, everyone's going through it. And it's just I felt like everyone was just kind of having a hard time. And I guess I didn't feel as alone in that, but I also wanted to be the strong friend for all of my friends, to be the one who had never self-harmed, or the one who had never gone through eating issues and stuff like that. And I was able to not have habits like that for a while. But eventually it came to about junior year. I had been off and on and feeling joyful and happy, and then also feeling a little bit depressed. But in junior year, I put so many things on my plate. I started a new relationship, which was a whole journey in itself. I put on a lot of leadership opportunities that I was doing and started running START. I was still in high school, and just also dealing with things with my parents, just communication issues, and just growing up and everything like that. So that's when things started to get really overwhelming, and I started to feel like I needed to escape, really. And that, I remember starting to feel anxious, and I started developing a little bit of an eating disorder in the fall. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I should probably go to therapy. And I mentioned it to my parents, and then I didn't mention it again. And then later I would end up going to therapy. But I was like, I feel like this is something that I need to do, but I pushed it off until it was almost too late. And it came to the point where I was very close to committing suicide, and I had made a plan and everything. I was ready to say goodbye to my friends, and then just realizing that this would be it. I think by the grace of God, I was just able to be okay, I need to get help. So that kind of moves to the next part of I went to the hospital, and they checked me into a psych ward. And I think that's one of the bigger factors of my story, and the fact that I was introduced to a lot of people who were really, really hurting. So a lot of people there in the psych ward dealt with stuff like depression and anxiety, and suicidal ideation, and a lot of things like that. And a lot of them were actually part of the LGBTQ community. And over time, I came to understand that these people, though they may be doing something that a lot of people consider to be wrong, or living a life that a lot of people consider to be sinful, they're just people, They just desire to be loved, they desire to be seen, and a lot of them are just kicked out by their families, or just at risk at home, and just going through a lot of things. And my eyes were just open to that, because I'm older now, but I'm still sheltered. I'm still growing. I'm still learning how to just perceive the world. And after after coming out of the hospital, I started this series of just going through a lot of therapy. So I went through individual therapy, which I'm still seeing my therapist today. She's amazing, which is great. I went through group therapy, like partial hospitalization programs, PHP, intensive outpatient, and a lot of different just programs. And they taught me a lot about like how to cope and how to take care of things. There's also like setbacks, of course, because it's a new environment and you're just around a bunch of depressed people, so it's hard to like have fun and stuff like that. But yeah, it was definitely a journey. I took part in a few other therapy groups or residentials and stuff like that, and I felt like I just went on this journey of just like up and down, just feeling very just depressed for a long time. And I feel like thankfully there was a turning point in my story, where the day before graduating with you, actually, I was like very, very deep in the depression and feeling very just hopeless. And I was just like, God, I just need you. And I was just like sweeping my bathroom and just doing chores, and all of a sudden like these words, "I was created to love you," came into my brain, and I'm like, no way, like there's no other way that's like anybody but like anybody. It wasn't me, it was God, And I actually got a tattoo. I can kind of show the camera.
I love that.
Yeah, my sister's handwriting, and it was just like this light switch like flipped, and all of a sudden like I had a purpose. It doesn't mean that things were healed or 100% better, but all of a sudden I had a reason to keep going. So like that was back in like 2022. In these past couple years, I've just kind of been learning and growing and making mistakes. I've gone to like the hospital quite a few more times. I've just been like kind of learning that there's a lot of ebbs and flows of life, and for me personally, I'm learning to adapt to it. I'm learning to cope when it happens, but also just like have hope that God will heal me, either on this side of heaven or the next. And yeah, I I'm very grateful for all the people who have helped me through everything, like just the joy of my friends and my family members just rallying around me. And I'm starting to learn to have hope in things alongside having a purpose, but also enjoying things, like enjoying things in nature. And like sunsets or like swimming or just like stars, just how beautiful they are, that there is just so many good things in this life to be able to hold on to and to move on and move through. And yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's really beautiful too, just finding those things in everyday life. And I think that's something everyone can needs to do, and it does help ground you a lot, I think. Is there more you want to say, or can I ask some questions?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that now like things aren't fixed, but there's so many good things that have happened. Like I got to go to YWAM in 2024, which was really fun, and I got to take part in a DTS and go on a mission trip to Brazil, and I made incredible friends, and I got to just like meet new people. I got to just live life, fall in and out of love, and just learn more about the world that God has created. So yeah,
so cool. What are some ways that people in your life have helped you through that? Because you're talking about you had friends and family who rallied around you. What are some very specific ways that they helped you that can also, I guess, be applied to maybe someone else who's listening who knows a friend who's struggling with the same thing?
Okay. Just being there, honestly, like being consistent. Like there's one way, like my mom and I, like she would drive me to therapy back when I did like a 5-day a week therapy program. She would drive me every single day to like a different city, so it was definitely farther away.
Mhm.
And we would both be exhausted. Like sometimes when we got home, we would just fall asleep in the car and just be like, "Well, when we got here, that's good enough." So just like being consistent for those people that are struggling, being there, being available, and also like, I mean, a lot of people when I kind of like told them my story, like my friends, like they were like surprised. Like one of my friends was like, "But you're so happy." I'm like, well, check on the smiling ones as well,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that that's such a huge thing because everyone does put on their own masks in so many different ways. And yeah, like I think it's really important, like what you were saying, to check on the smiling ones, just because you never know what someone else is going through. And like, I mean, especially with me, like having graduated with you, this is like the first time I've really talked to you about any of this stuff. And so, yeah, I think that that's just such an important thing. What is one thing, I mean, I know you're still obviously dealing with all this stuff, but what is one thing you would want to say to maybe your younger self who was first dealing with this, or maybe yourself when you like were planning on committing suicide?
One thing that I constantly remind myself is like, look how far you've come. And I think for my younger self, I would want to just give her like a glimpse of all the joys of life that are worth living for. You know, the people that are worth living for. I want to encourage her that like it's going to get better. It may not get easier, but it will get better, and you will grow more resilient over time.
That's really cool. Like that might not get easier, but it gets better. You were talking about a few different like therapies that you've done. What were some of the specific ones? I know you kind of went over them, but like how did they specifically help you each one? Well, you don't have to do each one, but a couple of them. Maybe.
Yeah. So group therapy is really helpful when you need like a structure, I guess. Like the group therapies that I went to, the ones that were more like most of the day things, it's nice to be able to be there and to learn like specific things. Like we went through dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's kind of like teaching you like coping mechanisms. It's teaching you how to handle conflicts. Individual therapy is probably my favorite because it's you get to build a relationship with someone that you trust, that you come to trust, and you can kind of get into the nitty gritty of everything. And then residential was basically it's like I went for like 33 days or maybe 35 days, and you spend time taking classes again with like the coping mechanisms and stuff like that, but also you get yourself into a routine of getting up at a certain time every day, of eating really healthy meals, of exercising, of talking to other people, and like managing conflicts within the group. And I think they all have their own uses, and they're all really, really helpful depending on what someone would need.
That's awesome. I know like there are a lot of Christian households where it's like, oh, we don't do therapy. Therapy is not a thing. You just have more faith in God or whatever.
Yeah.
And what would you say to, well, actually, first, what would you say to someone who says that to you or to someone else that you know of like, oh, just have more faith? We'll start there and then I have another question.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I think that God has given us really intricate minds to be able to figure out how to help other people, which is why there's so many like different like ways to help people, why people go to school for psychology to learn how to do that. And we need other people to grow, and whether it's through conflict, whether it's through learning from each other. And when you're going to other people through therapy, you're giving a chance to listen to what other people have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that was like kind of an answer to that second part, but what about like if you were just told like just have more faith, how would you like respond to that? Because I've been told that before, and I know that other people have been told that before.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that even something you had struggled with? Have you ever had to come in contact with someone like that?
I think I have. I think I've had people just like talk about how like it's just a spiritual thing, and I think it very much is a spiritual thing because I don't think we were created to be overly anxious. Like we were created to have like the natural fear of like not touching the stove. Like you touch the stove and it's hot and you're not going to touch it again. But I think that this world is broken and faith is incredibly important in order to get through these things. Mm-hmm. And God created us to also get help too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Yeah, I think it does. I always like hearing just different people's perspective on it because, I mean, mostly it's been from the same perspective of like, you know, that therapy and other things help. Like you've been talking about kind of. But I like how to hear the different ways people put it, I guess. Not necessarily different perspectives, just the different ways they put it. Because I had on another girl earlier who she has dealt with a lot of the same stuff. And so I asked her the same question. So it's just interesting to see those. And then you really were talking about at the beginning of your story about how like growing up sheltered. And I think, what are some ways that affected you? And then also having like experienced that and obviously dealing with stuff with that, does that change the way when like you have a family that you want to raise your own kids?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think growing up, once I realized that I didn't quite understand things the same way that other people did, because I just didn't have all of the information, I was frustrated. And I was frustrated with my parents for a while about that. But I'm learning now that for some people it's hard to take in so much information at one time. And like getting to learn about the world and its brokenness is something that like as you do over time you grow stronger, you grow more resilient, you grow to understand it more and just be like, not this is the way that the world is, but like this is the world because of its brokenness. And I think I haven't decided whether or not I'm gonna like homeschool my children because I mean I'm very grateful because of our homeschool co-ops and because of church we were very social as kids, and that helped a lot because I'm definitely an extrovert. But I'm not sure what I would do yet.
Yeah, that's fair. And then what is like if you could say one thing about mental health, mental illnesses, and that kind of thing to everyone who's listening, what is the one thing you'd want them to know?
That despite like our circumstances, God is always good. I know that it doesn't necessarily fix things knowing that, and it doesn't make things like 100% better, but just knowing that like God wants to bring goodness to your situation, and also like the depression or whatever diagnosis you're dealing with and you're facing and going through, like you're not alone, but he is good even if that is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know you brushed on it earlier a little bit, but what are some of the stuff that you're doing now to like kind of keep you on track, if you will?
Yeah. One thing I'm daily struggling with is getting enough sleep because that is like huge for your mental. It's huge for your physical. I'm learning that it's important to get exercise. I walk my dog, and that's really nice. Still getting into the habit of that, of course. And it's important to talk to other people. It's important to go to therapy. It's really important to have like a relationship with God and the fact that like He's here to help you through these things, you know, and to walk through it with you. And ultimately, like, he wants a relationship with you. And that relationship can bring peace and it can help you through your mental state.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else specific that you wanted to share?
No, I think I'm
Okay,
good.
And then how can we be praying for you?
Pray that I just kind of remember and hold on to the things that I share with other people, like the encouragement that I give, because I've learned through trial and error that like circumstances are really hard, but God is still good,
Yeah.
So just to believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for you. And
Thank
I know
you.
my listeners always do too. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it because I definitely did. It was great catching up with Kat and hearing this bit of her story that I haven't heard before. I hope it really touched some of you. Her link will be in the show notes, as well as all the Talk Busy with Lizzy links, so go check all those out. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. I'll see you guys for next week's episode, and God bless.